Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm so excited to be with you here today. We are officially in the new year, and we've got an awesome conversation, deeply intentional. I think it's a great way to start things off really at any point in the year, but we are going to be addressing some mindfulness and some good tips and tricks for you to kick this year off well. Before we get into it, I want to give some love to our sponsors, Luxe Neuro, offering neurofeedback and counseling where your heart and mind align. For more information about what neurofeedback can do for you, listen to the neurofeedback stories of transformation in the middle of this podcast. Neurofeedback effectively treats everything from insomnia, anxiety, depression, trauma, ADHD, and much more. Optimize your brain today. Special shout out to Declan James Watches. They are local and veteran owned with 10% going back to the Navy SEAL Foundation, and our very own Colorado Clownfish Swim School, swim lessons and water safety training for all ages. They believe in life skills through sports, so go waterproof your family today. Check them out at coloradoclownfish.com. Without further ado, I want to welcome Carrie Rickert to the TNT mic. Carrie, welcome.
Thanks so much, Kristen. I appreciate being here today, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Let's go. I'm going to give a brief bio, but Carrie covers a lot of ground. She's an author and a fellow podcaster. She's a trauma survivor, management consultant, owner of Nomis Advisors. Did I get that correct?
You did.
Okay. And author of Trauma is a Catalyst. In everything she does, she works to gain clarity for her clients and help them grow professionally and personally. Like I said, she's an author and fellow podcaster. So your business is super interesting. And I want to get into that because I think it's more relevant than ever. We're all humans of trauma in some capacity. And I think that conversation is often overlooked. Mental health is becoming more and more accessible and socially acceptable to discuss. Before we get into that, I always like to talk about the human behind the mission. So give me a little bit about your young self, young Carrie.
Okay. So young Carrie grew up in Arnold, Maryland. I lived with my mother, my stepfather, who I call dad because he's been my dad since I was 18 months old, and my younger brother. It was a great life. We had some struggles. My brother had mental health struggles and ADHD and trouble in school, which, I was a heads down, I'm going to get my work done, do the best that I can, perfectionist kind of people pleaser, as older children tend to be. And, but now I look at, it's funny because I always say that my brother and I didn't get along until he went to college, which was 4 years after I was I graduated from college and then he went to college, and that made us friends. Before that, we're like, ugh.
Totally.
So yeah, that was young Carrie. I always striving, always trying to be the best that I could be and get the best grades and do all the right things, and lots of people pleasing.
And says, I'm also an oldest. I have 3 younger brothers. So I'm with you. We were not friends until later in life. Were you a leader early on? Now as like a coaching human and a consultant and, a leader in this space, were you a natural leader early on, or did that develop later?
So I think it developed later. It's interesting because I spent a lot of time around adults. So I learned how to have conversations with adults from a very early age. And I was always more comfortable around adults. So relative to like leading my fellow children, that didn't really happen for me. It was because I was always kind of an adult. Like I could have probably stood in front of a group of adults and led them to something. Yeah. But kids, I was like, not too sure about these people.
Yeah. That's interesting. Why were you always around adults? Was it just something that you preferred, or did your parents bring you to a lot of events?
My parents, so my dad was the motor vehicle administrator for Maryland, and he went to conferences 4 times a year throughout the country. And so it gave us an opportunity to visit different places in the country and meet new people. But part of that was you had to know how to speak to adults appropriately and be polite and, say the right things and not get yourself into trouble, because doing any of the wrong things would send the wrong message for my dad. So, we learned really early on how to talk to people and do it in a very respectful way.
That's amazing. I always think, I'm like you, and I say my varsity humans, fellow listeners, lots of entrepreneurs, leaders, public speakers, podcasters. We make all the moves to like intentionally be successful, and oftentimes God, universe, Madonna, whatever you believe in, big Madonna fan, tease you up for what you're going to do. I mean, all that experience as a young human was such great prep and builder, like skill strengthening set for what you do now. Do you feel like you were ahead of the game, even like coming out of college and whatnot, having some of that experience under your belt?
Yeah, a little bit. I think so. And then my undergraduate degree is in clinical psychology. So I've always been really interested in the mental health field. I have always been incredibly interested in what makes people tick. So my curiosity, I think, set me up better than anything else to be able to really dig in and ask people questions so that I can then figure out how I can help them moving forward. It's generally me just asking lots and lots of questions and learning as much as I possibly can. And I think the combination of having to speak with people who I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable around if I wasn't forced into that on a regular basis. And also just being curious about the human condition and how people have gotten to where they are. I think all of those things really has allowed me to flourish in a consulting and coaching field.
Absolutely. And what a time to be in that field. I mean, it's so funny because I think my business different, but fellow consultant, and then social media took off. Like I was poised and building right at the right time for certain things to take off and be, more of a social norm. And the mental health conversation has just gotten stronger and stronger. Has your business grown not only because you're a qualified, gifted human, but also because just the timing of where we are in this world?
I think I think the timing of where we are in this world has allowed me to meet some really incredible people and to share stories more readily. So I think that's really contributed to the podcast. I mean, I've had people coming out of the woodwork to ask me to be a part of the podcast, which is fabulous. Because I've learned so much from people and have really enjoyed listening to those stories. What I think is always the most important thing is to really listen to the people that you're speaking with. It's to ask good questions and listen to the answers, not just to respond, but because you're really interested in what the answer is.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think you can fake that. I've had a couple, actually more than a few guests. I think I'm on year 5 now. And they've been like, you really listen to the answers. So that's great if you're guessing it. And I'm like, well, yeah, isn't that why we're here? Like, I'm not a reporter. I'm not, that's why I say it's a conversation versus an interview. And it sounds the same for you of like, I'm not only doing that because it's the right thing to do, but I actually really want to know what you have to say.
Right. Exactly. And so in management consulting, my specialty really is organizational assessments. So in my 15 plus years of management consulting, I have literally interviewed hundreds of people and asked lots and lots of questions to figure out where they are in their business, how they got to where they are. and what their hopes and dreams are for their business and personal life here on out. And then like, okay, let's figure out how we can put a team together and help you achieve those goals. Like, it really comes from a place of curiosity, and also I have the ability to help people, at least in the figuring out what the challenge really is, and what a good direction to try might be. Like, it just is, if people are open to sharing, it's easy for me to figure out how I can listen to those words and say, oh, how about this? Have you tried this? Or, you know what? I have a perfect person who can help you with this. Let me see if I can make that introduction, or let me pull that person in. It's, I don't have all the answers, but I pretty much know somebody who will. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and it may be a whole bunch of people, but
Yeah.
I can pull from, I make a point of knowing as many people as possible with as, great, as much breadth as possible relative to their skill set. So I can say, I had somebody ask me the other day about raising funds for an expansion in their business. I don't know anything about that, but I know people who do. And so I'm like, let me see who I can connect you with.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I think that's so important. And I want to talk about the trauma side of things, because so often our leaders, I'm an athlete forever, and I never bought into coaches that didn't actually walk the walk. And I think our young people are more conscious consumers than ever, and they can see through the BS. So if you haven't done it, and if you're not like facilitating that team mentality where you can connect someone or do this in your own life, no one's going to buy in. So I'd love when my leaders come on the mic and say, maybe I don't know this, but I know someone this. And here you are facilitating teams, and then unconsciously or consciously, you're facilitating teams, even recommending someone to someone else. Like, it all works so harmoniously together, and it's all a part of being successful. And I love also that unconscious mindset of abundance. There's enough to go around. If you're referring someone else to someone that's more fitting, or there's a fellow podcaster or whatever, there's more than enough to go around. And it's all about serving our humans as best we can.
Absolutely, because I don't have all the answers, but someone out there does. And if I can help you connect to that person, like, then I've done my job. And if you have a challenge later on, you're going to come back to me because I helped you, and I'll do it again. Like, that's great. That nothing brings me greater joy than seeing people's aha moments.
Absolutely. And it really does. One thing leads kind of to the other. Like you said, they'll come back, or they might be a referral for you. I'm really curious. So Nomis Advisors, we did jump right in, but you've got the business management side, and then you've got this other side where you can counsel and address trauma head on. You said get accessible and personalized post-acute trauma coaching from the comfort of your own home. And I'm really curious. I want to know more about that specifically, but also how's the crossover with the business and then this mental health conversation, because it has to overlay. I just don't know, like turmeric and tequila, it's often put in the same bucket.
Right. So it's interesting, because the more in my management consulting role that I speak about my trauma. So 11 years ago, I was in a really terrible car accident. I had a traumatic brain injury. I had basically just shredded my left hand, had to have that completely reconstructed. I ended up with a lot of different complications. And I spent a month and a half in University of Maryland shock trauma, and then another couple of weeks in a rehab center. So I have experienced a lot of trauma. I was 37 at the time. I had kids who were 4 and 8, and I was newly separated. So it wasn't like the best time of my life to have this kind of thing happen, but that is how it works, right? So the more that I have been open about talking, and I don't bring it up, but if I have a client say something to me, a business client say something to me like, oh, I'm really struggling with this, then we'll talk about trauma. Sometimes I'll send my book, anything like that, because what I found right after my hospitalization and when I came back is that, one, I tried to do too much too fast because, again, independent people pleaser. I wanted to make sure that I could take care of all of the things myself again. And to do that, I needed to go back to work, and I needed to get things done. I needed to take care of my kids and all of these things. And this is not a unique story. Like, it just isn't. I wish that it was. I mean, and other people's trauma is not the same as mine, but having to go back to work because you're having financial difficulties, even though you're really not physically or mentally in a place to go back to work, is a common theme, right? Going back to work and realizing that the management in the company that you're working in has no idea what support you need in order to make that transition more smooth. I mean, if somebody hasn't been through a traumatic experience, like I have, physically traumatic, emotionally traumatic, they don't know how to handle it. I mean, like, for me, and this is funny because I worked for a management consulting firm when I was in my accident, and I tried to go back to work like 3 months after I got out of the hospital, and it lasted for about 2 weeks, and then I was like, I can't do this. I just can't. I'm exhausted. It just flattened me every single day. I would get home from work and I'd just be useless, which meant I wasn't taking care of my kids. I wasn't, making food. I wasn't doing the things that needed to be done. And no one there at that company, and that this is not their fault, it is just how it is, they didn't know how to support me. And I didn't know what to ask for because there was this like missing piece, right? Where, I've experienced something horrible and it's easier for everyone to just like pretend it didn't happen, myself included. And I realized very quickly that, my experience made a lot of people uncomfortable. Is that because they fear their own deaths? Maybe. Is it for some other is it because I lost the hearing in my left ear and now, struggle to listen to conversation that isn't in this sort of, like if I'm in a large group of people, I struggle. And there wasn't a support system in place. And I think that one of the big things that I want to focus on and that I am focusing on is how do we help people transition back into the work world when a traumatic event has happened? Whether that is the loss of a loved one or a miscarriage or, sexual abuse, anything. How do we transition back into life and work life when we don't even know what support to ask for? And I think that telling our stories and sharing with other people, one, makes people more comfortable at hearing it, and two, gives people a sense that they are not alone in some of the experiences that they've had. I have not met anyone that I've shared my story with that hasn't had some part of recognition in that, in my feelings, in my, maybe not the exact experience, but certainly in the like, oh my God, my brain is exhausted. I can't actually handle an 8-hour workday. Like, what do I do now? And I didn't know who to ask. I didn't know what to do. And I had to figure it out for myself. And fortunately, I'm really persistent and really resilient. But some help would have been nice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, what an extraordinary education and blueprint almost for your business, for the business side and the mental health side, because again, you can authentically walk in it. And anytime you've gone through something, the quote, like everybody's going through something, it's so true. And the beautiful thing about a podcast is you can have conversations and you have no idea what people are coming to the table. Even if you have their resume and their bio and all that, then you get into convo and it's like, God, this human has done so much, and every person has a story. So that trauma really provides such space for empathy. And if there's anything we need in this world right now, it's just holding space for one another in some capacity, because we never know what the other human has gone through or what they've seen or haven't seen. And like you so eloquently put, it's the exposure, it's the talking about it, the vulnerability and showing up. I think I was always kind of a different learner. Like the school thing, I got it done because I wanted to play sports, but documentaries and conversations, like I'm an in real life kind of learner. So the exposure has been such an instrumental piece of my journey, and hence I love podcasting. But I love that you're on that and you're so aware of that, and you can take this trauma and tragedy and really turn it into triumph, as cliche as that sounds. It's real, and it comes from such an authentic space. And obviously the resilience and the strength and your ability to stay in it to help heal yourself is remarkable. And like you, I think wanting that support and then showing it for others has to be magical. That in itself has to be healing for you.
It really is. It really is. And, and writing the book was very healing for me, because, and I wrote the book so that I could get all of it out, right?
Yeah.
But also because I wanted people to hear my story and realize they're not alone.
Yeah.
And, connection is such an important thing, especially in this day and age when everyone is so polarized on every opinion. Like, we can't just get along, right? We all have these very, very polarizing opinions about things, myself included.
Yeah.
And what's really important is not that you and I might have differing opinions, but that I want to listen to what you have to say. And I think that, the big lesson in writing a book and doing a podcast and talking to people all day, every day, is that you can always learn something from someone.
Yes.
Even if you don't agree with them fundamentally, you can still learn something from them, and you can learn what makes them tick, and then you can give them more grace because you understand.
Absolutely. I mean, I wish people could understand, because we all feel the way we feel because we've come from nurture and nature, from our experience, our past. And if we have different pasts, of course, we're going to have different views and opinions. And like you said, you open up the door to see a different way to learn. But I always say also to make a friend. I mean, people are genuinely wise and funny. Like the humor you miss out on judging someone, even if you totally don't disagree, like the through line of the sense of humor and like the things you can laugh at are such a common denominator. And man, if you're not finding a way to laugh at this day and age, I mean, you're missing out. I think that's like just such a big piece of the medicine. I did want to touch a little bit more. Trauma is a Catalyst, your book, and you're the co-author of Trauma to Triumph: Stories of a TBI Survivors and the Vital Role of Post-Acute Care. Can you give us a quick synopsis of both those? I know you kind of talked about the first one, but I want to make sure we share both of those because they're so amazing.
Sure. Yeah. So Trauma to Triumph was a compilation of a bunch of people who had had traumatic brain injuries and their stories. brief versions of it, but also like what were the tools and resources that we used in order to help us move forward. I had been at the time a board member of a foundation called Hobblejob, and the founder of Hobblejob was actually at University of Maryland Shock Trauma at the same time I was.
Yeah.
She was hit by a car crossing a street with her bike, and ended up with a traumatic brain injury and a whole bunch of other injuries. And she kind of figured out the same thing that I did, which was there are a whole lot of resources out there and nobody knows about them. Because when you are in the hospital for a brain injury, you are learning how to do basic things, like you're constantly being tested with occupational therapy. Can I go to a grocery store and know what I'm looking for? Can I, have a phone conversation? All of these things, which fortunately for me, I passed all of that stuff with flying colors. But a controlled situation like the hospital is totally different than when you go home. And when I went home, I went home to 2 little kids. My parents moved in with me and the kids because I couldn't drive. They don't just give back your driver's license after you've had a traumatic brain injury. You have to retest for that. You have to prove to them that you can drive. Fortunately, I can, but
Yeah.
there were lots of things, and I am so fortunate that my parents could stop their lives for as many months as they did to help take care of me and my kids. But there was so much that none of us knew. And when we were in acute care in the hospital, when I was in the hospital, I wasn't listening about the resources that were available. I don't even know if people told me.
Mm-hmm.
It's very possible that they did. But, you're in the here and now, and you're trying to survive day to day. And then you go home and you're like, oh shit, what next?
Yeah. Totally.
Totally. I don't know what to do. And so Trauma to Triumph is a bunch of different stories about what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Here are the resources that helped us. So it was in taking part in that book that I decided, okay, I'm really going to write my story now. And I had written, as part of my healing journey, I had written right after I got home from the hospital because I was trying to process through all of these feelings and the fears and everything else. Like, what can't I do anymore?
Yeah.
And what is that going to mean for my life? And how am I going to create a quality life? So I started writing, and I wrote a blog, and, it was mostly people who knew me or knew of me because of family and friends and heard my story. That was my audience. But I had more than one person, probably like 10, say, you should write a book. And I always was like, nobody's going to want to read my book. Like, why are they going to want to read my story? It's not, it's just what happened. It's not anything exciting. And, but what I have found is that what it is a starting point for conversation. My experience and my willingness to listen to what your experience has been is a starting point for a conversation. And it's a meaningful conversation. It's not just like, hey, how's the weather? Now, I'm fine with that too. Like, I talk to people constantly. I walk into the grocery store, and if you're wearing a shirt I like, I will tell you.
Hey.
I startle people all the time.
I love it.
But, you know, but if you want to have meaningful conversations, then you have to share something about yourself in order to do that. And so even when I am assessing an organization, I will pull in things from my experience. Like, oh, I had something similar to that happen to me in my experience. Or I had a client who had this same problem. This is what they did. And, you know, this is how we helped them. And all of those experiences, well, they aren't all yours. They can all be beneficial to you. It's that team approach again, like you said. And it's interesting because, you know, you asked about young Carrie, and, you know, young Carrie also played field hockey for high school. And I was in an orchestra. And my first, like, I played in orchestra from 3rd grade through senior year in high school. And I will tell you that that was my first team experience. Because you are only as good as the worst person in that orchestra. And so you have to learn how to play together. And same for field hockey, and same for lacrosse and everything, right?
All my East Coast sports.
Business. Yes.
Yeah. It's so real. And that's why I'm a longtime athlete. So many of my metaphors and learnings are, you know, life's such an advocate. And it can be sports, music, theater. I actually love music the most. I think it's the biggest thing that unifies us more than cooking, food, you know, drinking, athletics, all of it. It's such a great thing, but you learn those things unconsciously as a young person. I do have to champion, though, all the conversation around brain health, because also being an athlete, you know, I have 2 military brothers. One did have a very serious TBI in combat, and then concussions as athletes, and CST for football. So it's a constant conversation. We don't know a lot about the brain, and it's not talked about enough. And it's the only organ you can't transplant. It's the most important thing in your body, really, and it makes up who you are. So I really champion that you're not only sharing your story, but you're furthering that conversation around the brain, because it's needed on so many levels, like trauma and everything, but also just mental health and how we address it without medication and where that's appropriate. That could be a whole podcast. But I think that's really big. I am curious, you know, having been on both sides of like the management and then the mental health, what are some of like the most common things you hear in all of these conversations about from people, you know, whether it's wanting to be heard or feeling seen or not feeling alone? What are like some of the most popular things that you think come up from either side?
So I would empowerment.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely. Okay. People want to be seen and heard, and they want to be valued for what they bring to the table. And that is true in business, and that is true in personal and everything else. And when you have had a trauma in particular, that can really shake your confidence a lot. And, you know, because you have to kind of rebuild your life and be like a new version of yourself. And, you know, when you are rebuilding and becoming a new version of yourself, that new version isn't necessarily the most confident person in the planet, you know? So giving people an opportunity to use their voice and, you know, is so important, because that gives permission for even more people to use their voice. Right. Yep. So like if I'm sitting here talking about my story and brain health and the ways that trauma impacted me, then other people can go, I can talk about my story. And people are listening.
Yeah.
And therefore, what I have to say is valuable. And therefore, I'm valuable. And that's not really the right message, because everyone is valuable, right?
Right.
But I think when we get a hit to our confidence, whether that's from a traumatic event or, you know, whatever the circumstances, right? Like when we get that hit to our confidence, it is very hard to feel like we bring value to the world.
Mhm.
And the way that you allow people to feel like they are important and they bring value to the world is by taking the time to listen to them and empowering them to share their stories. And that is everywhere. Like, I just conducted a whole bunch of interviews to do an organizational assessment. And the big thing was people aren't listening. They're not listening to me. They're not asking me. They're giving me this role, and then they're not asking me what their decisions are, how they're going to impact my team. And it's my team that's doing the work that's being impacted. How do I feel empowered when other people are making decisions without even asking for my input? Right? And it's like that often in business, like you have a senior leadership team who is making decisions without really knowing what the work of people are doing, right? And how things are going to impact them. Same with your personal life, right? You have a traumatic event and nobody wants to talk about it. They want to pretend like it didn't happen, because sometimes that is the response. Like, we'll just pretend this didn't happen and we'll move on, right?
Right.
That doesn't help anyone's confidence.
Right.
Right? Like, you can learn so much from other people when you give them an opportunity to share.
Yes.
And
yes.
Some people have some amazing ideas for their business or for their life. And if they don't feel like a valued member of whatever this team is, they're not going to share. And guess who's missing out? It's you. Right? Like, you're missing out on learning from them because you're not giving them an opportunity to be heard.
Amen. And I think that's a main takeaway we can take away from this conversation, but also moving into this new year and beyond, of just empowerment, empowering yourself, empowering others. And I don't think that solution is this grandiose gesture. It's like you said, it's just listening or sharing something vulnerable at yourself and holding that space. It doesn't need to be some big overhaul of life. It's just a little small gesture that I think opens up major doors.
Right? Like, people can hear the words no if they share what their opinion is. So, like, just like as an example, say, I'm the CEO of a company and I need to lay off 3 people. And I say to the team lead of that division, I need to lay off 3 people. Here's why I don't think you should lay off these people. We need this team, and here's why. So if that message is heard and the decision is still, we have to lay off those people, then the conversation turns around and says, and you say, I heard what you said, and I understand that this is going to impact you in a negative way, and I will do everything I can to mitigate this, but I need to make this decision because it's what's best for our company's bottom line, or whatever it is, right? Like, it's that closing of the feedback loop that allows people to feel like they've been heard, even when they're told no.
Yeah. Yep.
So, like, people can accept, like, this is the answer because this is what's best for the company, if they feel like they've been heard and taken seriously. And
Absolutely.
same in life. Like, I need this for this reason. Well, we can't provide that for you. Okay, well, that means I'm not going to be able to be in this office for as long as you expect me to be, because I just can't do it, right?
Yep.
And it takes a while to be able to say the things that you really need, and it takes feeling safe. And so if companies and families practice empowering others and caring about what other people are sharing with you, then it allows everyone to feel valuable, even when the answer is no.
Yeah. And like you said, this is a practical skill set for in the workplace, on the athletic field, in the orchestra, like all the things, like these are all just such applicable life skills. And I'm so excited. I hope people lean in and dig into more of what you have going on with the books and the podcast, because there's so much phenomenal human intel and human connection leading at the forefront of what you're doing. I think that's just what we need more than ever. I am curious, with all these different avenues you have going on and such resilience displayed, I asked this question to everybody at the end as we wrap up, but I'm really curious what you have to say. What is success to you?
That's a very interesting question, because it's something that I think about all the time. I used to think success was doing everything right. It was like getting it all done, making the amount of money that I need, and all of that, right? But success is really being able to spend my time doing things that are meaningful for me and the people around me. Do I need to make money? Yes, because you have to in order to eat and have a home and things like that. But is that the most important thing to me? No, it's having the time and the energy to spend on doing the things that bring me joy and light.
Amen. Yeah, I think sometimes it takes us quite a journey to get back to simple things and the simple joys because I think we're taught to chase the Escalade with the rims and the big shiny lights, and I'm here for all those things, but also it's just simple stuff that is really the joy and through line to life. Where can we find you? Hit us with social handles, websites. Where do we get the book? All the good details.
Sure. So the website is nomisadvisors.com. That's NOMIS advisors.com. My Instagram is at Nomis Advisors. Facebook, I think, is Carrie Rickert.
I love when people don't know. That means you're not on all the time. That's good.
I'm not on Facebook anymore all the time, but Instagram at Nomis Advisors. That's generally a good place to find me.
I love it. That means you're out there in real life doing the work, and that is what we need, even as a marketing branding professional that advocates for the socials with balance. Go get out there in real life. Well, I love it. I appreciate your time and energy. I love that you are walking in it and sharing the resilience in the story, because that's the energy we need in this new year and beyond. So go check out what Carrie has going on, and get inspired, especially if you're around the mental health and brain conversation. Everybody needs to know more about TBIs and brain health in general. So there's a wealth of information, and that is a hard path to navigate. So check out Carrie's, not only her book, but the way she's traveling through the world in her podcast, because they cover a lot of bases. I do want to give a special thank you to our sponsor, Luxe Neuro, neurofeedback and counseling. Luxe Neuro wants to meet you. If you're ready to transform your life, visit them at luxneuro.com. And Colorado Clownfish Swim School, swim lessons and water safety for all ages. They believe in life skills through sports. So go waterproof your family today at coloradoclownfish.com. Carrie, thank you for joining me. I appreciate the time and energy, and let's definitely try and catch up soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Kristen. I enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise. Thank you.
Me.
Absolutely. Such a pleasure. Check us out wherever you get your podcast, and look for this video on YouTube. Cheers.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.